Confidential information in an NDA can be drafted as follows. Confidential information means a disclosure's confidential information listed in the schedule. Please note our draft mentions a schedule. Depending on your business, you can fill out the schedule to include what information you would like to keep as confidential. And any other information in whatever form and of whatever nature which is confidential in nature or may reasonably be considered to be commercially sensitive, provided by it, directly or indirectly by any means to a recipient or to any authorized persons of the recipient, whether before or after the date of this agreement relating to the purpose or otherwise in connection with or anticipation of the project, including all data or information, whether technical, commercial, financial, or of any other type, in any form acquired under, pursuant to, or in connection with this agreement, and any information used in or relating to the disclosure's business, including information relating to products bought, manufactured, produced, distributed, or sold. Services bought or supplied, operations, processes, formulae, methods, plans, strategy, production information, know-how, design rights, trade secrets, market opportunities, customer lists, commercial relationships, marketing, sales materials, and general business affairs. Information relating to the customers, suppliers, methods, products, plans, finances, trade secrets, or otherwise to the business or affairs of the disclosure. All information acquired by observation by the recipient or any of its authorized persons at the offices of or other premises of the disclosure, relating to the purpose or to the affairs of the disclosure, and all analyses, compilations, studies, and other documents prepared by the recipient or any of its authorized persons, which contain or otherwise reflect or are generated from the information referred to above. In the same clause, you can also draft what will be excluded from the definition of confidential information. It could be that information that is generally available to the public. It could also be that information that was available to the recipient on a non-confidential basis before disclosure by the disclosing party, or information that becomes available to the recipient on a non-confidential basis from a person who, to the recipient's knowledge, is not bound by a confidentiality agreement with the disclosing party or otherwise prohibited from disclosing the information to the recipient. It could also be information that was lawfully in the possession of the recipient before the information was disclosed to it by the disclosing party, or information that the parties agree in writing is not confidential or may be disclosed. The parties should consider to whom the information will be passed. For example, the discloser may give information directly to one of the recipient's employees or advisors, such as its banks, rather than directly to the recipient, and will want to ensure that any information disclosed in this way is protected by the NDA. One way of achieving this is to include a definition of authorized recipients that covers the parties connected to the recipient who are not parties to the NDA. At certain times, although the discloser and the recipient might be the only parties to an NDA, the discloser will probably want the recipient to treat any information that it receives from connected parties as confidential. Hence, it is essential to define who is an authorized recipient or authorized person. Typically, the authorized person can be defined in the agreement as a recipient's officers, directors, members, partners, employees, consultants, agents, representatives, or professional advisors engaged in the evaluation and negotiation of the project. In case of sale or purchase of a business where the target company is a distinct legal entity, the seller will want to ensure that the target and its related individuals, such as directors and employees, are also included in the definition of connected parties. The discloser may supply information to the recipient in several different ways. For example, in face-to-face meetings, such as meetings with management, in emails, or in a data room. To ensure that all parties have certainty as to the nature of confidential information, the parties may agree that confidential information should cover information disclosed in any way. Once confidential information has been defined, the parties need then to agree how the recipient should be required to treat it. They should be able to define the extent to which the information has to be kept confidential. In certain situations, the discloser will want to restrict the recipient's ability to use the information about the target as much as possible to minimize the chance of a leak, such as in the case of an acquisition or in the case of listing a company in the stock exchange. A clause can also be included which obliges the recipient to seek approval from the discloser each time that it wants to disclose information to a third party. However, the recipient might see this as too onerous, and so the NDA could merely require the recipient to seek approval from the discloser, perhaps in writing, for each new third party to which it wants to disclose confidential information. Any person whom the discloser has approved would then be an authorized recipient. The NDA should require the recipient to ensure that its authorized recipients do not disclose the information to any person, so that the recipient is liable to the discloser if any authorized recipient leaks confidential information. However, a simple disclosure obligation on the recipient might not provide the discloser with enough protection. The discloser may worry that authorized recipients will not have a clear idea of what information is confidential and what their obligations are in relation to it. For this reason, it is common for NDAs to require the recipient to enter into an NDA with any third party on the same terms as the NDA between it and the discloser, often known as a back-to-back NDA. The original NDA should state clearly that any back-to-back agreement should impose the same obligations on the authorized recipient as the NDA does on the recipient.